students as smoke from a deadly wildfire continues to drift south, choking the air in Sacramento and the San Francisco Bay Area. Air quality officials say the region will experience some of the worst air quality in the 8 days since the fire started last week, destroying the town of Paradise, California. The wildfire has charred more than 200 square miles since November 8th and is 40% contained. With the deadline for the Florida recount quickly approaching, some ballot counting machines have overheated and broken down. Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections Susan Butcher spoke about the next steps for the recounting process.
When the machines went down, we lost some of our tally. We lost some of the ballot counts. And so what they've been trying to do is we've identified the precincts where we're missing ballot counts. And we run the operation in batches, which means there's several boxes per precinct, and we've identified certain precincts that appear that have dropped certain boxes of ballots. And so I need my expert team, and these are all of my employees, not the county, because they're certified in operating this particular kind of software. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to go back and look at the counts of each box, and depending on how many we're missing, we can identify which box didn't read.
While the machine recount was originally supposed to make a 3 p.m. Eastern deadline today, election officials believe that regardless of when they're done, the state will probably need to recount many ballots by hand. The Trump administration has announced sanctions against 17 Saudis accused of involvement in the killing of Washington Post contributor Jamal Khashoggi. Fox's John Decker reports from the White House.
The sanctions announced by the Treasury Department come just hours after Saudi Arabia's public prosecutor announced that he was requesting the death penalty for 5 people suspected of involvement in the killing, which took place in Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul last month. The individuals sanctioned include those who were part of the team of Saudis that arrived in Istanbul in the hours around Khashoggi's arrival in the consulate. The sanctions will freeze financial assets of the targets if under U.S. jurisdiction and prohibit transactions with the individuals. It also prevents them from traveling to the U.S. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
British Prime Minister Theresa May says if politicians reject her Brexit deal, it will set the country on a path of deep and grave uncertainty. Her words. Defiant in the face of mounting criticism, May said today that she believed with every fiber of her being that the deal her government struck with the European Union was the right deal. She told reporters she isn't planning to give up and would resist a leadership challenge, saying, "Am I going to see this through? Yes." After a vicious hit to an opposing player, a Division III men's basketball player will no longer be taking the court with his team. Matt Napolitano has more.
Video has gone viral showing Fitchburg State basketball player Kawan Platt approaching Nate Tenaglia of Nichols College during a game Tuesday night, elbowing him in the face after Tenaglia shot a three-pointer. Platt was immediately ejected from the game, according to those in attendance, and now Fitchburg State has suspended Platt indefinitely from the team, removing his name from the roster on the website. Platt also banned from the Massachusetts school's campus. Fitchburg State in a statement saying Platt's behavior, quote, is antithetical of our community values and good sportsmanship, end quote. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And good news involving retail sales. After experiencing the first back-to-back decline since 2015, U.S. retail sales surged in October to hit 0.8%. Dan Celia of Financial Issues thinks that's a very good number.
Beat expectations, so that was some very good news. Futures didn't really turn or change on that news, but it was very good news. Even when we strip out autos, we see 0.7% of retail sales. Now, gasoline was up 3%. Gasoline sales. So strong demand on gasoline. It was up 3%. That's a retail sales number, and that was factored in as well.
The expectation for October retail sales was 0.6%.
Oh, what's that song we used to sing? Amazing Grace was one of them, where we sang, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound.
That saved a wretch like me.
You know, they took the word wretch out. Many people took the word wretch out. They said, because don't say that. That's offensive. But without Jesus, you are a wretch.
Don't miss Bishop E.W. Jackson and The Awakening. Weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed,
and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
At the present, I do not anticipate military personnel coming into direct contact with migrants.
The first wave of the migrant caravan arrived unexpectedly early at the U.S. border in Tijuana, where there's been a fortified wall for decades. They've been looking through the barricade, and some have been climbing it, teasing the Border Patrol on the other side.
If you're going to keep plowing everything up at 2016, count me in. If you want to look forward, I'll look forward. If you want to look back, we're going to all look back.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. It's me, Stacy on the Right, here live and direct to you from the heartland, a citizen of this great nation, and just so excited about being with you today. We have a great program. Let's talk about who's going to be in our first hopper. First up on the guest list is Phil Kerpen, president of American Commitment. And then we also are going to be talking about what you just heard there in our little mashup leading into the show. We're going to delve into this issue of the migrants arriving early. Now, you're probably wondering, how could you have arrived early with a 1,000-mile journey? How'd you do it? Well, they were bussed in, they were trucked in, they were assisted in getting here. And the first group to reach the southern border is a group of LGBT individuals, self-proclaimed, who had to be separated out from the larger horde because they were in danger. And so they were given special treatment and brought up a little bit earlier, and they claimed that they're going to now apply for asylum and that they've been coached, and so we'll discuss that as well. We're also going to talk about this big story that's trending today. It just doesn't get any better than this when you talk about the internet and what kind of depravity can come out of people who are looking for money and power, and then, boom, there you are. And here it is. It's this couple, Kate McClure and Mark D'Amico. They had this wonderful, heartwarming story with Johnny Bobbitt, who is a homeless veteran who gave $20 to Kate when her car broke down. And, he miraculously had a $20 bill on him and gave it to her so she could buy gas. And she starts a GoFundMe for him. It raises $400,000. And then that's when the story started. So we'll get into that. I want to point you over to Operation Christmas Child. You can go to Operation Christmas Child's website, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. This is collection week. You can be a part of what we're doing here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk by taking your box or the items for your box to one of the 5,000 collection centers, one of which is just near you here in the United States. So thank you so much for that. So today I want to get into praying for our government leaders. And so that's going to be our encouragement/daily confession for today. And I'm just heading over to our live streams just to take a quick peek, because I'm seeing 0 people coming in on the live stream on our little counter here. We are not currently live streaming to Facebook. We do not have a live stream going to Facebook right now. So the prayer for our government leaders that I want to share with you is something that our pastor has put. It's been 3 years, I think, since he put that manual out, and we were able to join in and kind of participate in this. It's a quest that we're all on, that we're trying to grow as much as we possibly can, trying to grow and become as close to God as we can, to put him first, to really orient ourselves that way so that the rest of everything else can kind of flow from that. And one of the things that we are called to do in the Bible, and that we have to really participate in as an expectation, is the call to pray for our government and our leaders who are placed in authority over us in the government. And, we choose them. We decide what we're going to do. We're going to put these individuals, we elect them, we send them into government, but that's not where it ends. It doesn't end with a vote. It begins with us voting for them. So this is the prayer that our pastor has in our prayer booklet for government leaders. And it's similar to things that you've probably heard prayed before, that you may have prayed yourself before, but I thought it was wonderful because it's simple, it's scripture-based, and it's something that once we get into the habit of praying this way, we can add to it. It's a work in progress. So I want to share this with you. It's praying for government leaders. Open the heart of our president, or it could be your mayor or your county executive. You put whoever you are praying for in that spot. Open the heart of our president to hear and respond to the gospel of Christ if they do not know you. Help them to accept wise counsel that you approve of, which is Proverbs 11:14 and 15:22. Teach them to trust in you and not in their own wisdom. Protect them from evil, 2 Thessalonians 3:3. Enable them to carry out their duties with humility toward you and towards others, 1 Peter 5:5. Give them courage to do the right thing under pressure, Proverbs 2:11 through 15. And give them a tender compassion towards those they lead and serve, Colossians 3:12. Now, this is what we're called to do as Christians, is to pray for those who are placed in authority over us and to bless them. Okay, so we have just a little update on our live streams. We're still having issues with those. I'm not sure what people can see and hear. I'm seeing a lot of people commenting that they can't see anything. Yeah, so Republicans aren't in power anymore. There are a couple things to remember. First of all, it is better to have a Democrat in a spot than a rhino Republican. And if you're not sure that I'm right about that, just look at Jeff Flake. He's on his way out the door. He's literally like a foot and a half out the door, just like his coattails are still in the door. And he's threatening to hold up the judicial appointments that are supposed to be just going through humming, like a well-oiled machine, like the Anheuser-Busch beer machine. If you've never been to St. Louis and you are wondering what we have that's cool, we have a lot of stuff that's cool here. One of the coolest things you'll ever see in your life is the constant 365 days a year, 24 hours a day production of beer that emanates right from downtown in Anheuser-Busch's own little mini city located in downtown St. Louis. It's actually kind of South City, really, but we used to live near there. We had a 4-family that we owned down there right on a park down in South City, and we took the tour a couple of times with the kids. And it's something to behold, the bottles whizzing around you and the beer going into the bottles and the caps going on and all of that. It is an amazing sight to see. And so when you think about that 24-hour-a-day production and all of that, it kind of makes you, that's what I want you to keep in your mind when you're thinking about the installation of these judges, the replacement of these judges, empty seats on benches across the country at every level, these federal appointments that the Senate is mandated to basically advise and consent and push these nominees through that come straight from the desk of the president. And Jeff Flake is saying he's going to hold all of that up until he gets a bill through that ensures that the president cannot fire Mueller. Now, remember, in the beginning, the first year of his presidency, the president mentioned many times that he would fire Mueller, that it was a witch hunt, that there was no collusion, and he was getting upset about it. And he worried about the scope of the investigation. Well, this last year, because there's only been 2 years of his presidency, the president has reassured the American people, congressmen, anybody who'll listen over and over and over again that he has no intention of stopping the Mueller investigation, that we need to see it through to its final report. And now we're hearing back channel that Mueller has expanded the investigation and that it will go on well into next year instead of wrapping it up. So the Democrats and Jeff Flake, who's nothing but a glorified Democrat, are now saying that they want some kind of assurance. And they've gotten Flake to, on his way out, continue to stab the American people in their backs, people who voted for him, people who call him a Republican, by doing this extra illegal, extra shady, extra, like, he's not the guy who's your friend. He's never your real friend. He's always behind your back, backstabbing you, talking about you, planning, plotting against you. He's never got a clean face. He's never loyal. He's never upfront. He's never right to you. What you see is what you get. That's not him. And so in response to all of this, Senator Graham says, if the Democrats want to look backwards, we can all look backwards. Here he is in number 2.
To my Democratic friends, if you want to look backward, we're all going to look backward. I want to know why the FBI reached to the conclusion, along with the Department of Justice, that Hillary Clinton didn't commit a crime. Was it because of political bias? If you really wanted to stop Trump, how in the world could you indict her? Was the reason she wasn't indicted is because they wanted to make sure that they stopped Trump? And how can you stop him if you indict her? Did the Department of Justice and the FBI use a document paid for by the Democratic Party research by a foreign agent to get a warrant against an American citizen that was inappropriate, potentially unlawful. We need a special counsel to look at all this, but I intend to look at it. I'm going to look at it. If you're going to keep plowing everything up at 2016, count me in. If you want to look forward, I'll look forward. If you want to look back, we're going to all look back to everything and everybody, not just Trump.
And this is something that the Democrats might actually welcome. I know you're thinking, what are you talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is the fact that there are a lot of Democrats, millions, and some of them are in the consultant class, some of them are in the donor class. A lot of them are Americans who've just had enough of the Clintons, period. And these people are seriously sitting at home having conversations around their kitchen table and online and social media groups and through secure, encrypted messaging on Telegram, conversing about the fact that Hillary Clinton is actually gearing up for another run. So it'll be Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, possibly Kirsten Gillibrand, who says she's seeing if she's called, like her prayers ever go anyplace but right down onto the ground like pancakes. And, of course, now we're hearing Hillary Clinton. Why would she run? You have to go back to the podcast. We had an interview with a really, really sharp guy who says this is all they're built for. The Clintons are a political machine, and when they're not running, they're not in power. And when they're not in power, they're not making money. And when they're not making money, this is no good for them. So possibly, they're going to be going and that's going to be happening. But my encouragement for Democrats is this is the house you built, and you're going to have to deal with it. And in dealing with it, they're going to be facing a real. It's like, how do you drive a stake in the heart of the Clinton dynasty? We thought Barack Obama did it, but that wasn't it. A lot of people thought that Donald Trump did it by vanquishing Hillary. But when the Democrats picked up her mantra of, well, she won the popular vote, that made it plausible to consider her again. And so if she goes and speaks to a group, let's say, which we saw happen about 3 weeks ago, she was in front of a group, or whenever it was, she made that comment about, we'll be civil when we win. When we're in power, we'll be civil again, and we'll stop being violent. She was speaking to a group at a conference, and she was up on the raised stage with another person who was interviewing her. And she was able to get, maybe what sounded like 10 or 15, maybe 20 people tops to clap and show her, acceptance and kind of, hey, you should do this, support for her running again. And so all she has to do is go to 2 or 3 events and have 20 people at each event. So, basically a statistical non-event. 60 people out of 300 and some million say she should run, and all of a sudden she's back in it again. It's a psychological issue that the Clintons have, that they can't just go into that good night and allow the rest of us to live without them. So, all right, when we get back, we're going to have Phil Kerpen. He's the president of American Commitment. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Our tours each year fill up quickly. And so I'm letting you know now, don't tell anybody else now, that the 2019 Spiritual Heritage Tours are planned for June and for September. So if you want to go this year, that is 2019, you need to let us know as soon as you can. Visit the website spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com. Again, those are 2 separate trips, one to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and the other one to Washington, D.C. and George Washington's Mount Vernon. Stephen McDowell, who's the president and founder of the Providence Foundation, is our historian, and he'll be on both trips telling us the behind the scenes and the stories of who, what, when, and why.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. Have you ever overheard someone saying not so flattering things about you? I remember some years ago overhearing a conversation criticizing how I was handling a project I was doing. Let's just say that they were very clear about what they thought I was doing wrong. Now, I must admit, their words kind of stung me, and at the time, I took what they said far too seriously. Let's face it, Nobody really likes negative criticism. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verses 19 through 22 gives us some insight along these lines. Wisdom strengthens a wise man more than 10 rulers who are in a city. Indeed, there is not a righteous man on earth who continually does good and who never sins. Also, do not take seriously all words which are spoken, lest you hear your servant cursing you. For you also have realized that you, likewise, many times curse others. I think there are some lessons here from these few verses we can learn about words. Number one, don't take everything that is said seriously. It's as simple as that. Just don't put so much weight on everything that is said. Let wisdom and balance affect your responses. Secondly, don't grant status to undeserving criticism. When we put too much weight on something and we make it disproportionate, it's giving too much status to something that, in the scheme of things, is not that big a deal. Then thirdly, you too have said things that should not be taken seriously. Here's what I want you to remember today. Just because someone says something bad about us, it's really not the end of the world. And the other side is true too. We need to be careful about our careless speech. Now let's watch what we say.
Legacy Moment with Crawford Loritz is produced by Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today at Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. And if you are in the Midwest and certain other parts of the country, you've experienced the snowpocalypse. The early snow, we're supposed to be experiencing fall weather right now, but instead we've got full-blown winter, something that's not supposed to arrive until January. And I'm wondering, who do I put my order into or my complaints for, not having the global warming that I've been told is a part of my life and that I need to be afraid of, because the end of the world is nigh, yet here we are with what looks like to me 6 inches of snow on the ground in Missouri. It's supposed to be a blistering inferno. We're supposed to be wearing shorts. Anyway, so it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program, President of American Commitment, Phil Kerpen. Phil, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Stacey.
Okay, let's talk about the Democrats' plan for health care, quote fingers, in the next Congress. What's up?
Well, Republicans did an astonishingly bad job on the health care issue in the election, and they didn't even really make an argument. They just sort of curled up in the fetal position and got beaten constantly by Democrats over the head on the health care issue, probably the number one thing that cost them so many seats. And it's kind of unfortunate because they actually have a pretty good story to tell on health care, even though they failed to get the big Obamacare repeal bill done. They did get the individual mandate repealed, and that opened up the space for the Trump administration to do a lot of deregulation, and in particular to bring a lot of less expensive non-Obamacare options back on the market that people can now buy without having to pay the penalty tax. And I think that's a good thing. Republicans need to continue to give people more choices and bring down costs. But Democrats now are in a position where they've got to kind of deliver something on the number one issue that they campaigned on. And the problem they have is about half of the Democrats in the new House majority want a totally government-run single-payer system with private insurance illegal in this country, one of the most extreme socialized medicine schemes in the entire world. And that's kind of the Bernie Sanders plan, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And, the other half, it's not really clear exactly what they want other than more government control and regulation and probably more subsidies from taxpayers. And so it's going to be really interesting, I think, to see if House Democrats are able to, put anything forward in terms of actual legislation on health care and what that might look like. And at the same time, I think the big question for Republicans for the next couple of years is, are they going to find their voice on health care? Are they just going to keep sort of ducking and hiding and losing the argument and the political issue pretty badly?
Well, there's a lot, Phil, for Republicans to actually talk about. Just I guess the president of the DNC was just recently, I think yesterday, asked how do you, where do you get $32 trillion or some outrageous sum that we, even in our rich nation with our record tax collection, we can't even muster the sum that's required to implement their scheme of single payer. And she said, that's an ongoing conversation. I don't know where we get the money from. That's as if she said we get it from Mars, or there's an exoplanet they've recently discovered that's the closest planet to our sun. We get it from there, right? I mean,
yeah, the numbers don't work. The numbers don't work at all for their plan. And, a lot of people talk about this $32 trillion number, which was a 10-year cost estimate. That's trillion with a T, which was a 10-year cost estimate that a think tank put together. But that's like a real lowball estimate, as crazy as that sounds for a number that big, because they accepted Bernie Sanders' assertion that doctors and hospitals would take a 40% cut in their payments from what they're making now to what they'd get paid under a single-payer system. And let me tell you, Stacey, hospitals are not taking a 40% cut. That will never occur. Hospitals are like the most politically powerful interest in this country. In many communities, they're the biggest employer. The idea that they're going to take a 40% cut is completely insane. And so if you back that assumption out, it's probably, more like $40 trillion or more. And so, if Democrats were ever going to try to write an actual bill with a financing mechanism of any sort, they would have to, double or triple all the taxes that are paid by everyone in this country to try to pay for that. And so the numbers for the version of single payer they're talking about don't seem to work. And that'll probably prevent them from ever actually seriously advancing it. They've tried, and they tried in the state of Vermont. It was a very small state, and they gave up because the cost didn't work. Supposedly they're going to try in the state of California, where Gavin Newsom was elected governor, saying he was for it, and Democrats now have supermajorities in both houses of the legislature. But I think they're going to discover there pretty quickly that the numbers don't actually work. And so, I don't know what the Democrats can actually deliver when so many of them were campaigning on something that's just totally impractical, and, you can't actually make the numbers add up.
So Democrats are huge into incrementalism. And, that's why they hate it so much when Donald Trump practices incrementalism, when he talks about Mexico paying for the wall. Who cares who pays for it? Now he has brought the discussion of having a wall into the mainstream, which is something the Democrats never wanted to happen. And so they will not ever be able to implement the single payer that they want, but they will be successful in reducing options for Americans and basically kind of dragging the dead carcass of Obamacare back to life and kind of injecting it with steroids and stimulants and raising that monster from the dead. And that's what I think a lot of Americans who they're not really sure what was wrong with Obamacare, but they know half the country opposed it. The idea of Obamacare was good, but they know they never really realized the full promise of it, what they were told they would get. And so there are millions of Americans out there who are waiting on someone to bring them the Obamacare they were promised. And I just don't believe that's possible, Phil. I believe that Obamacare, as it was promised, is just as unfeasible as their single-payer pipe dreams. So what can the Republicans do to get a hold on this thing?
Well, I actually think they had a good story to tell this election. They just didn't bother to attempt it. They didn't try to tell it, and they've got to find their voice on the issue. What the Trump administration has been doing on health care is they've kind of said, okay, we can't get rid of Obamacare. We didn't have the votes. We were close, but we didn't get there. But we did get rid of the individual mandate. And what that means is Obamacare is still there. We're still spending a ton of money on it. We've got the exchanges. All of that's still there. But it's not mandatory anymore. It's now voluntary. If you don't want to be in that, if you don't want to have insurance that meets the definition and all the rules and regulations and the standards of Obamacare, you don't have to. There's not going to be a penalty tax on making that choice anymore. And what that does is that opens up the possibility of other products that don't meet the definition of health insurance under Obamacare, the sort of one-size-fits-all approach of Obamacare, can be brought back to market. And that's what the Trump administration has been doing through a whole series of deregulatory actions. And so they did association health plans. So now national associations can band together and small businesses can get access to large group insurance plans. And, if you work for a small employer, they can go through one of these association health plans and basically offer you the same benefits that a large employer would get at the same prices that a large employer would get. That's one of the things they've done through the Department of Labor, and we're starting to see those plans rolled out by some of the major national groups like the National Restaurant Association and others. And we've seen the deregulation of short-term insurance plans. These are the not regulated options that don't necessarily cover all the benefits that are in Obamacare, so typically they don't include pregnancy and neonatal, and typically they do still have pre-existing condition exclusion. So if you need a pre-existing condition coverage, it probably doesn't work for you. But for people that they work for, these plans are much, much less expensive than Obamacare. I just pulled up the latest, the average in your state, in Missouri, the average short-term premium is $81 a month compared to Obamacare's $378 a month. So, yeah, you don't get as much, but the price is much, much less. And if you read the fine print and it makes sense for your situation, that could be very, very attractive to a lot of people. More recently, the most recent step we've seen from the administration is something called health reimbursement arrangements, which will allow employers to, instead of offering a health plan, to offer an amount of money pre-tax that you could use to choose your own health plan. And that's also a very positive option. And I think the whole point of what Republicans are trying to do on health care right now, and President Trump in particular, Stacey, is they want to be able to say, look, if Obamacare works for you, it's still there. It's still there for all the subsidies are there for people who qualify for the subsidies. That choice is there. But there are so many people that Obamacare is not working for. And we need to have other choices and other options, particularly significantly less expensive choices and options for all the people that Obamacare is not working for. And this idea that, we wanted to get rid of it. We failed at that. But it's not what we were able to do. And I think this is really President Trump's going to need to run on this in 2020. What we were able to do that in some ways almost just as good as getting rid of Obamacare is we made it voluntary. So the people who it works for, the people who want it, the people who can qualify for subsidies to make the numbers actually attractive, it's there for you. You can go sign up, you can get that. And in fact, Obamacare is kind of stabilized under President Trump. More insurance companies have come back into the Obamacare markets this year. And there aren't nearly as many places with only one insurer. So there are more choices than Obamacare. And actually, for the first time, Obamacare premiums have stabilized nationally. They're about the same for 2019 as they were for 2018 after having huge increases every single year. And so Obamacare's still there. It's stabilized. It's voluntary. If people want it, they can be in it. But at the same time, we're bringing a lot of other choices, a lot of other options for people, many of which are much less expensive. So for the people who don't want Obamacare, the people that it doesn't work for, they're not going to be punished anymore. There's no more penalty tax, and they're going to have other choices to look at. And I think that's got to be they've got to continue. I think they're on a good path with that, but they've got to talk about it. They've got to sell it. They've got to market it to the American people, or else they're just going to get beaten again on the issue the way Republicans did this year.
So I guess my first statement that I would make after what you just said, Phil, is that perhaps a couple of staffers could sit down with you and some of your people, and maybe you could make them a little fact sheet based on what you just told the listening audience all over the country. And then maybe they could figure something out, because I think the way you explained it just now was succinct enough and direct enough, and really there's enough positive there that I can't imagine anybody but hardcore ideologues who just hate the idea of anything that President Trump has had anything to do with opposing what you just described, which is obviously it's not the optimal utopia, which is the government pays for everything for your health insurance and it's just as good as a private health care plan, a Cadillac plan through your employer. But obviously, since that's a pipe dream, what you're describing is the best of both worlds. The Democrats get to keep their much loved legacy item from the Obama administration, and people who like it can use it, and everyone else can choose something else, which is much more American than the previous option. How do you get what you just shared in front of someone at the RNC or someone over at the White House in the communications area?
Well, we're going to keep saying these things, and we're going to keep pushing these things out. And I do think, the Trump administration has done, they've done talking points and fact sheets on some of this stuff. It's been a situation where I think a lot of the political consultants and a lot of the candidates themselves just, they sort of got convinced that, hey, healthcare is a bad issue for us. Let's talk about something else. Let's try to talk about immigration. Let's try to talk about another issue. And you can't do that. Healthcare is too important to too many people. You cannot beat something with nothing, and you've got to tell your story. You cannot let the Democrats have a clear field on the issue that's the number one issue to most Americans. And so I agree with you. It's a communications problem. We're trying to make this case to people. We're trying to sort of explain that, whether you love the story we have to tell or not, you got to at least try. You got to convince people that you care about their health care and it's an issue that you're working on. And frankly, I think it's going to come down for 2020. It's the big difference between 2020 and 2018. 2020 is going to be a presidential election. And President Trump himself is going to need to make the case to the American people that they're better off on health care than they were under Obama, and that he's continuing to move us in the right direction, and that he needs more help. He needs to be reelected and needs more Republicans in Congress to complete the job. But he's got to, I think, really take credit for the positives that he has been able to accomplish. And they've got to put people out there in front of the media, in front of the camera, people who say, this is how much I saved because of this deregulation. This is the plan I was able to get that works so much better for me. They've got to put human faces on the deregulatory efforts that they've had so that people can understand and relate to them.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of having the president explain it. One thing I've noticed about him is he will take an issue that appears to need 10 paragraphs of explanation and boil it down to, 3 sentences, and he'll utter it at a rally in front of the cameras where you can't really suppress that. And then millions of Americans are aware that something is either an issue or is no longer an issue or the truth about something. And then they take that nugget, and then you'll see the media kind of ramp up to try to either debunk what he said or to try to explain what he said, to put a spin on it that's positive to the Democrats. But no matter what, the message has been put out there. And I'm not sure if it's that consultants or people who were helping with the campaigns were like, this isn't a winning issue for us, just leave it alone. But there was a palpable silence on the issue. And I think the president could have discussed it in all of those rallies, 50 rallies across the country. He could have explained this well. But the other thing I know, Phil, is that when Americans don't get what they want from members of Congress, they don't vote for them again the next go round. They'd rather see a Democrat sit there than a Republican who has promised things that they didn't deliver. And so and I know the House was able to vote out the repeal of Obamacare, but McCain killed that in the Senate. And so I think Republicans in the House suffered for the actions of John McCain when he refused to vote for the repeal of Obamacare, and it didn't get done.
Well, and that same bill also had Planned Parenthood defunding in it as well, which is another huge promise they made to the conservative base and then totally failed to deliver on because that bill went down.
I don't think they have the will, actually, Phil. I mean, it's a whole nother show we could do. We could do a whole 2-3 segments on this. I honestly don't believe the will to defund Planned Parenthood exists within the Republican Party, because if it did,
well, but they were one vote away from doing it if McCain hadn't done what he did. So that's how close it was.
Yeah,
which,
but
might be a miracle in itself that they got that close. But that was in the same bill.
So that it hinged on McCain, to me, stinks like a fish. Like I don't think they can do it. I don't think they can do it, because if they wanted to do it, there have been other things they've really needed to get done, like the tax reform bill, and they did that by hook or by crook. Whatever they had to do to get it done, they got it done. And if they wanted to do the same thing with defunding Planned Parenthood, and I still have hopes. I never give up hope, but I'm definitely much more cynical about it because they were in charge for 2 full years and had all the chambers.
You would think just the fact that Planned Parenthood spent $50 million this year electing Democrats, that they would do it just for the political reason.
Just for that.
If not for the underlying abortion.
Just for the political side of it. You're so right, Phil.
Yeah.
Phil Kerpen, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Your expertise is greatly needed and appreciated here in our country. The work that you do at American Commitment, thank you, sir. Have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Talk to you again. All right, so that was great. That was fantastic information. Share it with friends. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back with more right after these messages. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. A Republican from Oklahoma has a plan to fund completion of the wall at our southern border. Senator Jim Inhofe's solution is simple: reduce illegal immigrants' access to federal welfare and use those savings to fund the wall. Here are the specifics. The WALL Act would require each person seeking to collect a child tax credit to have a work-authorized Social Security number instead of just the child. It would also require that E-Verify be used to prove citizenship. The minimum fine levied against illegal border crossers would be increased. With open borders Democrats poised to take over the House in January, Inhofe's plan should be implemented during the lame duck session. It's no secret that America is a great place to live. Congress should act quickly to end the attraction of taxpayer-funded easy living for illegal immigrants. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Victory McIntosh.
Early will I seek thee, O Lord. Man, it's something about when you start your morning off right with Abba, Father. I'm telling you, will the enemy come? Of course, he's going to do his job. But it should motivate you even more. Man, I got to stay connected to the vine of Jesus. How do you do that? By getting into the Word of God. You got to do it.
Tune in to Word on the Street with Victory McIntosh. Saturdays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. Democratic Georgia Congresswoman-elect Lucy McBath stands out in the same way former Democratic New York Representative Carolyn McCarthy did 22 years ago. Both came to Congress compelled to act to impose firearm restrictions after their relatives were killed by gun violence. Remember earlier this year when gun control advocates said that things would be, quote, different? Those pushing for tighter gun restrictions only made incremental progress in their quest in the midterms. Voters sent to Washington a handful of Democrats who defeated NRA-supported Republicans, but their effort may have even lost ground in the Senate. McBath's victory may give Democrats who want to alter gun policy a roadmap. Who held the district before McBath and the woman she beat, GOP Georgia Congresswoman Karen Handel? Republican Representative and Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price. Price used to win that seat with more than 60% of the vote. If Democrats are ever going to make inroads on gun policy, this is the type of district which they must flip from red to blue. However, the Senate is another enterprise altogether. Democrats are a far cry from 60 votes and operational control there. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The story sounded almost too good to be true. Johnny Bobbitt, a homeless man, gave Kate McClure, a total stranger, his last $20 for gas after she became stranded on an interstate in Philadelphia. McClure and her boyfriend, Mark D'Amico, said they went public about what happened because they wanted to help Bobbitt.
We were thinking, what if we started a GoFundMe for this guy just to get him, to get him off of the streets even for a weekend.
The fund quickly grew to more than $400,000 with donations from more than 14,000 people.
It's like winning the lottery.
But the happy story began to crack when Bobbitt accused the couple of stealing his money, using it to fund lavish trips to Vegas, the Grand Canyon, and New York City. Local law enforcement zeroed in on the couple in recent months, raiding their home, towing away their car. An arrest seemed imminent. But this morning, a bombshell. According to a new report, authorities believe the entire tale was a ruse, conceived by all three of them in a get-rich-quick scheme. According to an NBC affiliate, McClure and D'Amico have turned themselves in, but Bobbitt is still at large. The three are expected to be charged with conspiracy and theft by deception for working together to concoct the story. D'Amico and McClure always denied spending Bobbitt's money themselves, saying they were managing the money for him because of his drug habit.
So, is there anybody out there who's really shocked that this has turned out to be a total scam from the giddy up? Because the first thing I thought when I heard the story was, I'm not giving any money to this, because in what universe does a homeless person have $20, an actual $20 bill on them, and they're nearby when a woman's car breaks down but only needs gas? Like, the story is so implausible. But I didn't say anything. I actually was like, if the story's true, what a wonderful gesture this homeless man, made for this woman. And, I hope things work out for him. But something about the story stunk. Right? What are you going to do? Everyone's so excited about the beauty of the story. So you've got the three people involved. You have Kate McClure. Johnny Bobbitt is the homeless guy. And then the woman so she's 28, 29 years old. Her boyfriend is Mark D'Amico. He's 39. And they're living together. And she, quote unquote, breaks down, and this guy gives her $20, and then she goes live on Facebook to share the story with friends and sets up a GoFundMe account and says, look, we're trying to raise $10,000 so this guy doesn't have to sleep on the street tonight. Give. Well, they end up raising, at first it was a couple $100,000. It ended up being in excess of $400,000. So then you would think the story ends there. They turn over the GoFundMe account to this man, and they go back to their lives, and that's it. That's what you're thinking, right? Well, that is not what happened. And you might have seen updates on this story, because this is the funniest thing about the story is that the more updates there were, the more time went by, the more craziness was ensuing around this couple. And I want to give you the call lines, because when we get done talking about this story, I want to take your calls, because the latest, next thing we'll discuss, latest numbers out there are showing that there's another caravan forming with 100,000 people in it that's going to approach our southern border from way deep down south in South America. So we'll talk about that as well. So in wrapping this up, of course, you remember the couple denied any wrongdoing, but the guy, he gets a lawyer. He gets a lawyer, this homeless guy. So they turn over about $75,000 to him, but they say he's got a drug problem. We're going to manage the money for him. Red flag number one. If they raise the money for him, it doesn't matter if it was $1 or $1 million, they should have turned it over. But we all know human nature. They're like, well, we should manage the money for him. He wouldn't even have any money if it weren't for us telling his story. This all comes through us, so we're going to manage the money. And by managing it, we should be able to do a few things for ourselves. You see how that works? It just kind of spirals out of control from there. And before you know it, you've got this couple buying themselves a BMW, taking a lavish trip to New York, which included helicopter rides around the city and all these cool Instagram pics. And now they're kind of living like mini Kardashians. And the guy is like, where's the money going? And when do I get my hands on the money? And they're like, you're still doing drugs. You can't have the money. Now, mind you, in the GoFundMe, they didn't say, provided he's clean and drug-free, we give him this money. They just said, help us raise $10,000 for this guy who helped us out. He was a kind-hearted guy. So the entire thing stinks to high heaven. And the further into it you go, the further into the story as it develops, the more you start to suspect that they really didn't expect, number one, to raise $400,000 for him. And number two, they didn't think the money was his. They felt like it was theirs. Even though it was raised for him, they did the work of raising it. It was their money. And so after you take out GoFundMe's fees, because I didn't realize GoFundMe's fees were so exorbitant, they raised over $400,000, but they had $360,000 left after GoFundMe took their cut. Now, is that something did you know about that? That GoFundMe took such a huge portion of whatever was raised? I mean, that is a racket right there. And GoFundMe's a hardcore leftist group. If you raise money for someone on the right, they'll disperse the money back out. They won't even give it to you. But they take a huge cut. So then Bobbitt, at this point, he's wondering what's going on. There's $360,000 left. He's gotten about $75,000 in cash, goods, and services. The couple says through their attorney, hey, we've given him more than that. We've given him $200,000. Well, that still leaves $160,000 that you're wondering what happened to that. So, of course, civil authorities are involved. There's a court case. They want to know what's going on. So then the money in the GoFundMe account, what's left in there, is frozen because the couple says, well, we're going to make good on the missing money. Just give us a little minute here to get it together. So then the prosecutor's office announced that the controversy was far from over and a criminal investigation would continue. And then the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office said they would announce new developments early on Thursday afternoon. So today, basically at the start of my show, and they're doing major new announcements on that, so it's an ongoing story. I'm kind of, so this is the thing. Stories like this really take away from the ability of other people who have a legitimate need, who are trying to raise money on these sites to really get the attention that they want. And all kinds of people are constantly approaching and saying, look, can you post the link to this GoFundMe? Can you post, everybody's got something that they're raising money for. And so it's hard to decipher between what's legitimate and what's not. But stories like this really take away from what people can trust. It takes away from what people want to be involved in or connected to. And, everybody's raising money. Everybody's got something that they care about that they're donating to. And if you'll give them 5 minutes, they'll tell you about it so you can donate as well. And there is no end to, worthy causes. But a lot of people, I've even seen people posting online about this story because it was trending on Twitter today, that they're just not going to participate in this kind of stuff anymore. And I think that's really sad. I think it's pretty sad that anybody would scam this, but I have to say, are we surprised that scam artists exist? We shouldn't be. Are we surprised that scam artists would see an opportunity to get together, 3 friends get together, and they're like, you're the homeless guy. We are going to be in need. We're going to rescue you by putting out a GoFundMe. People are going to give because you're this sympathetic character. We're going to split the cash. And then, of course, there is no honor among thieves. They raise a whole lot of money and realize we don't have to give him any. He doesn't even look like he can manage himself. Or maybe the guy really is on drugs. Who knows? They're in it together from day one. That is the latest development in this story. So just be careful when you're online and you're looking at giving to a GoFundMe or something like that. Now, if you're giving $5 or $20 and you're just, you're like, this is worth it, I'm giving to it, give with a clean conscience. And if it turns out not to be so on the up and up, you're out of $5 or $20, there's no big deal. But if you feel led to give $100 or $200 or more than that, then double check the story. Think about it for a second, kind of detach yourself from your emotions and say, does this smell right? Does this sound right? Does this sound plausible? And sleep on it. Pray about it, sleep on it, think it through, because usually with the GoFundMes, they have a amount of time, like a week, 2 weeks, a month, or they have an end goal, 10,000, 1,000, whatever. And so that gives you time to think about it and to decide if you want to put your money there. The other thing I would say, and no offense to the GoFundMes, because I know people use those to raise money for good things, like especially medical treatments for children and things like that. There's nothing wrong with it in and of itself. You just have to be wise. But I had a friend who our kids' private school was, they have the giving time every year. And I asked her if she was interested in donating. And she explained to me, and she's a God-fearing Christian woman, someone that I respect greatly. And she's a good friend to me and my family, and her husband and her kids. They're wonderful people. And she said that a few years ago, more like 15 years ago, they were praying over their giving, and they felt led to target their giving. So instead of giving 100 here, 50 there, 25 there to every single cause that popped up, that they were to be led by God on what areas they would give in. And over time, as their giving grew, they became more concentrated in where they put their giving. And so obviously this is outside of your tithes. We're talking about your charitable giving. Like if someone says we're raising money for, the Boy Scouts or for the church youth group or whatever, that's what we're talking about here. And she said that targeted giving had enabled them to really exponentially really just hone in on the things that they cared about and to become much more effective in advocating for those causes with other people to get other people to give. And so they have 3 targeted areas of giving. And I shared what she shared with me, with my husband. We prayed about it. We talked about it a little bit, and we felt like it was a really smart strategy to figure out some areas that you're very strong on, that you feel like these organizations glorify God. They accomplish their mission. They are good with their money. They are wise and prudent. And when we put our money here, we know it's going directly to the issue or the cause or what have you. And I believe that is a biblical way of approaching the issue of giving. It doesn't mean you can't still give, $20 or something, but the bulk of your giving is targeted towards 1 or 2 or 3 areas that you feel God has led you to and that you've prayed over, so that you're working in concert with him, as opposed to, casting in many, many different directions. And so it's something to pray about, and everyone will have what God has for them. It will be clear to you what God has for you to do. But it's an interesting quandary to be in, because sites like GoFundMe, due to their nature that they're online based only, and it's a story that you tell that either tugs at people's emotions or it doesn't. It prompts people to give or it doesn't. It's like such a fertile ground for corrupt dealings, for people to trick other people. And so it's obvious that the majority of the GoFundMes they're not scams, because the stories would be so like this is a story that was trending on Twitter today. I remember clicking on it. I thought this morning, I just went on Twitter for a couple of minutes. And I was like, I looked over on the left-hand side where the trending items are. I was like, why is GoFundMe trending? And the first thing I thought, you know how it is on Twitter, you're like, oh no, the head of GoFundMe has passed away. So I clicked on it, And what I saw, when I saw that it was about this story, I thought, oh, I forgot about these two. I clicked through to and the story after story, all the news organizations are covering it and doing, packages on it. It's a sad, sad thing because, we've all been there. You might be looking at, you just have a little bit of disposable income, after you've paid out, you've tithed, you've paid your bills, you get taken care of your necessities, you have a little bit of extra money there. And you look at, some story where you're like, wow, oh my goodness, I'd love to help, this family lost their home or whatever. And you're like, well, let me give. And so you give that money and you're giving it to what you feel is a good cause. And so you have to think about how many people, it was thousands, tens of thousands of people who gave to this GoFundMe account for this homeless man. And how many of them were giving out of, what little they had left, only to find out later that this couple, and this guy included, the homeless guy too, scammed them out of over $400,000. It's a sad story. It's a sad story. So I'm covering it today on the show because we've got to be really careful when we see these GoFundMe accounts and these stories about, not that you can't give or that you can't participate, but we got to be wise. And so, yeah, that's going to be, I'll leave it there. If you want to join the program, give us a call. Call-ons are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. I have some fun stuff going on with the website over at StaceyOnTheRight.com. It's not up yet, but we are going to be rolling out a new iteration of the website that's going to be much easier to use, much more user-friendly and simplified so that you can find everything that you're looking for. Streamlined process for the mugs because we've had some snafus on the mug orders. And it's just going to be a much better site. So look for that. I will keep you up to date on that as that develops. We have obviously this incompetence, really. And I'll just say this. I've been unhappy with Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen's actions in preserving the national sovereignty of this country at the southern border. And it looks like I'm not the only one. And now we have a little bit of proof that there's some incompetence going on there. Not happy at all. So that's the music. Good evening from the Heartland. OneNewsNow.com news and information is up next for those of you who are sticking around. God bless from the Heartland.
Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is that alternative radio network because we choose to infuse Jesus in everything we do.
We count it a blessing to be able to speak with integrity and to speak honestly on the issues.
Thank you for joining us, partnering with us, being a part of
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk, so that we can stand for the gospel.
Truth. Wisdom. Empowerment. Urban Family Talk. A ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. U.S. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke is warning that Southern California mudslides are a risk in the vast area charred by a one-week-old wildfire in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Zinke says federal officials will work with local and state authorities to try to reduce the risk. He spoke while touring the burn zone in the so-called Woolsey fire that prompted the evacuations of more than 200,000 people, including the entire seaside community of Malibu. A man believed to have sent unexploded mail bombs to political figures and critics of President Trump appeared in a Manhattan court today. More on that from Fox's Gernal Scott.
Cesar Sayoc did not utter a single word during his court appearance, but through his attorney entered a not guilty plea in federal court. Sayoc faces 30 counts for attempting to send 16 potentially explosive devices to 13 targets, including former presidents, other prominent Democrats, and to CNN last month. None of the devices exploded. State and federal authorities tracked Sayoc down at a Florida auto parts store before bringing him to New York to face charges. Trial details are expected to be discussed over the next several months before a jury hears his case next July. In New York City, Gernal Scott, Fox News.
A dramatic jump in the number of kids using e-cigarettes has the FDA taking swift action. Fox's Rachel Sutherland has details.
Convenience stores and online retailers no longer be allowed to sell sweet-tasting vapes like cotton candy and cherry bomb to young people under new rules proposed by the FDA. Commissioner Scott Gottlieb says there's an epidemic of nicotine addiction among the nation's teens.
Fully 78% rise year over year. From 2017 to 2018, the number of high school kids using e-cigarettes.
The nation's leading e-cigarette maker, Juul, announced earlier this week it was stopping store sales of some flavors to deter use by minors. The FDA also wants to ban menthol cigarettes. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
A Christian student at Cal Berkeley is being pressured to resign from a position in student government over her biblical beliefs. AFN's Steve Jordahl reports.
When President Trump recently redefined gender for federal purposes as the gender you're born with, it did not set well with students at Berkeley. A member of the student government quickly introduced a resolution condemning the president, but student Senator Isabella Chow couldn't support it. Anticipating the storm clouds ahead, she didn't vote no, she abstained.
I support, freedom from discrimination and freedom from harassment for all people. But where it crosses the line for me is that I'm asked to promote LGBTQ identities and lifestyles, and it conflicts with my values and the values of the Christian community that I represent.
It didn't take long for the hammer to fall.
My political party released a statement right after the vote disaffiliating with me that was shared widely. This issue has just gone viral. Like, people are calling me homophobic, transphobic, the F word, and many other slurs that I just don't want to repeat here.
Most of the campus is demanding she resign her post in student government. She's a junior and has a long year and a half in front of her. She says no one except her Christian supporters on campus will even talk to her anymore. But Chow is determined to stay the course.
The issue that students here at Berkeley have with my statement is that they fundamentally cannot reconcile how I can say I love you and validate you as an individual, and yet disagree with how you choose to identify yourself and how you choose to live your life.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
The Statue of Liberty's original torch has been moved from the base of the statue to its new home in a museum that will open next year. The torch was replaced with a replica in the 1980s. Visitors watched today as the base and the flame of the 3,600-pound torch were trucked slowly and carefully to the museum construction site about 100 yards from the statue. The torch was removed in 1984 because officials with the National Park Service and the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation determined that it was too badly damaged to restore. A new torch was installed in 1985, and the old one was placed in a museum in the statue's base. The new Statue of Liberty Museum will open in May 2019. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
At the present, I do not anticipate military personnel coming into direct contact with migrants.
The first wave of the migrant caravan arrived unexpectedly early at the U.S. border in Tijuana, where there's been a fortified wall for decades. They've been looking through the barricade, and some have been climbing it, teasing the Border Patrol on the other side.
If you're going to keep plowing everything up at 2016, count me in. If you want to look forward, I'll look forward. If you want to look back, we're going to all look back.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. So good to be back with you. I'm Really excited about this hour of the show. We are going to be speaking with Fred Jackson, who's a news director of OneNewsNow.com. And we're going to be talking about American Family News also. We're going to be talking about news of the day. That's up in the next segment. Right now, I want to get into this Caravan story. And we've been covering it here on the show. We've not missed anything. And there are new developments, obviously. And I think, so I have a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump in that he made promises, and he made those promises from the ground, the campaign trail, as an American citizen, and what he knew at the time about the border based on news reports and what little information he could get from people in the know. And of course, we have a lot of people in the not-for-profit sector who are either pro-immigration or pro-border, pro-American sovereignty. So there's a lot of information out there. If you want to learn, if you wish to be informed from both sides of the issue, it's possible. And the president really did that heavy lifting and did the homework. Now he's the president. Now he has people working against him. Now he has people actively fighting him on this issue. And the ones who are fighting him are very well organized, very well funded, and they seem to have a better grip on how to subvert the process than the president's cabinet members and staff have on how to just enforce the law. And I mean law enforcement. I've heard people say we have too much talk about law and order and not enough, common sense, not enough caring, not enough of an orderly fashion of the way we're treating people. And a lot of Democrats have latched on to this idea that the separation of families is something that is unique to the presidency of Donald Trump, when it's been going on since the Flores decision, which was decided in the mid-90s. And when you tell them that, they'll say, well, according to who? It's not according to anyone. The Flores decision is a searchable legal case that you can find out about, that has been written about by people on the left and the right. It's been reported by major news organizations. It is a fact of, the matter. It exists. It happened. It's historical. And being upset that I know about it and you don't doesn't change what happened. So you might think, well, at least we have the media on this particular issue. On something like the Caravan, they would be reporting what's happening from the ground, but they're not. You can't say at least we have the media. We don't have the media. We don't have anybody on the left who's really accurately reporting what's happening here. And so to demonstrate this, you have ABC and NBC ignoring the first wave of Caravan members arriving at our southern border, jumping the fence, et cetera, et cetera. Here it is, number 4.
Tonight, the first 800 migrants from the Central American Caravan are at America's doorstep in Tijuana, Mexico. They split off from a larger group of about 5,000 and are planning to request asylum here in the U.S. John Blackstone is at the border.
The first wave of the migrant caravan arrived unexpectedly early at the U.S. border in Tijuana, where there's been a fortified wall for decades. They've been looking through the barricade, and some have been climbing it, teasing the Border Patrol on the other side. A few have even jumped, including today a woman carrying a baby. But any attempt to cross here ends with certain capture.
I'd like you to think of border security just the same as your home, and when someone comes to your home, they're supposed to go to the front door and present themselves.
As many as 4,000 migrants are expected to arrive in Tijuana as soon as tomorrow. But with shelters in Tijuana already overflowing, even this first wave is straining the resources in this city of 2.5 million.
So we've got this, it's lawlessness. It's absolute lawlessness that these people were allowed to, under our direct supervision. We watched as they made their way from Honduras and El Salvador to our southern border, and now they're actually jumping the fence, and we're doing nothing? Please don't pretend to me, you Democrats, that this is something you would permit to happen at your house. If you knew someone was planning on breaking into your home, you would not just sit there and watch them do it. Not without calling the authorities. Now, I know Democrats are really into letting other people take care of their self-defense, and they don't believe in defending themselves, and except the few who own firearms. But would you just sit there and put up no defense at all? You wouldn't have anything to say about them coming in. This whole subject is enraging. And if you think that that's like your rage meter is up, is it? Well, here, I'm going to put a little fire under it and send it up even further. This is a piece that I found out on discussing the real DHS incompetence that we're now seeing at the southern border at Tijuana line. So there's it's been a couple weeks since we found out the Caravan was approaching our southern border, and that they know where they're going to try to access the country. They're going to Playas de Tijuana, where the land touches water, so it's exceptionally easy to pinpoint the vast 1,094-mile stretch of southern border that they're talking about accessing. The organizers of the Caravan, Pueblo Sin Fronteras, have a known base of operations at a certain place on our southern border. They used it for the April operation, and now they're using it for this one. You can read all about it in the San Diego Union Tribune's report 3 days ago, describing how Tijuana is bracing for the Caravan, and where outraged Tijuana locals are rather unhappy about the Caravan setting up camp in their upscale neighborhood again. So again, look, because this is how crazy this whole story is. I didn't even know Tijuana had an upscale neighborhood in it. But it does. It has an upscale neighborhood there. And the caravanners have put on a show climbing the border fence as agents watch, waving their arms, yelling victory. One jumped over and then jumped back over, having his fun as U.S. agents stood by and watched, instead of apprehending him. The images of these people hanging out at the top of this fence, sitting on it, they're all dressed in bright colors. It's like it's a show put on for our very entertainment. So they're basically throwing up their hands in the mission accomplished symbol. They're able to demonstrate that for all of our concertina wire and everything else we put at the southern border, it really doesn't mean anything. It's a joke. The U.S. is powerless, and that's the purpose of this show. They're going to jump the border anytime they want to, and there's nothing we can do about it. All of us that are enraged about this can go on being enraged, and we can knit socks and scarves and sweaters. We can punch pillows. We can take kickboxing classes, but we can't do anything to stop these people from basically overrunning our southern border. Now, there's two big things that are standing out. Remember, I reported right here on the show that there were all these miles and miles and miles worth of concertina wire that were going to be installed at the southern border. Where is it? Where is the concertina wire? It should be at the top of this border fence, so that if you decide you're going to climb up it, when you get to the top, you're going to think twice because it looks like he's going to cut you. No, it's not there. The Department of Homeland Security has had days of intelligence that they plan to head to Playa de Tijuana. So that's where the 26 miles worth of the first 26 miles should have been strung. Am I right? But they didn't string it. Now, there was a little bit of wire strung after these people got up on there and had their little show of force. But it was done by contractors, not by the military and not by DHS. It was done after the first accounts of the border spectacle reached the news reports. So apparently it's just been strung up in Arizona, where General Mattis and Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen made a show of visiting the troops a couple of days earlier. So she's been caught flat-footed again. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's time to get real here, because I already called her out once, and I thought maybe, after that, not that I think she listens to the show, but clearly I'm not the only one calling her out on this. And I thought after getting a tongue lashing by many individuals in the media about that ridiculous Fox News appearance where she's sitting in a director's chair with Martha McCallum, and they both have on their aviator sunglasses, and they've got their hair blowing in the wind, and they're talking about the border in hushed tones, the same way that me and my girlfriends discuss our favorite coffee shop or where we're buying gifts for our kids from. This is serious business. I can put some aviators on and talk about Christmas gifts because I'm not the Secretary of Homeland Security. I can go and put aviators on and let the wind blow through my hair and be lighthearted about this kind of stuff because that's not my responsibility. We need serious people in charge of this, and Kirstjen Nielsen is not serious enough for this task. We need a man, to be quite honest with you. And I know there's somebody out there who is so triggered right now because I said we needed a man. But men think strategically and operationally and tactically. Men don't need aviator sunglasses to make a decision. And I'm not talking about any old pansified girly man who's not sure of his gender, some leftist. I'm talking about a hardcore military operator, someone with lots of experience in combat and military operations and crowd control. That's who we need in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, not Kirstjen Nielsen. She has outlived her usefulness there. We don't need a Barbie or somebody pretty. We need someone who understands what is going on down there and it plans to do something about it. So you've got Operation Faithful Patriot, which is a link that goes to what it calls B-roll, background news, a border security link. This is all on the Department of Homeland Security website, by the way, which features a big item on security at the U.S.-Canadian border. It doesn't sound like it's even a big deal. If you go to the Department of Homeland Security website, you are going to be disappointed by what you find there because it looks like this whole Caravan thing is a non-issue. So there's a DHS screen grab of the belatedly strung razor wire, concertina wire, that's haphazardly tossed up at the top and a little bit at the bottom, and it doesn't even go all the way across. It stops at the water, as if people are afraid of water, as if people can't swim. So if you're a young man of military age, you just swam the border river at Mexico South, walked and hitched truck rides the 1,000 miles from Honduras, this little bit of fence with a little bit of concertina wire on one part of it is not going to be a problem for you. You're determined. You're getting into America. So you can walk over to the beach side with your feet in an inch or two of beach water, jump over to the U.S. from that point because it's a no-brainer. You're going to land in soft sand. Your feet will be wet. And it's the easiest part of your journey because you've already busted through a border fence, you've jumped down over bridges, and you swam in water between countries. You've already done all the heavy lifting. This is the last little part. This is easy. It's a walk on the beach, literally. So the border visit with Defense Secretary Jim Mattis and Homeland Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, they were visiting the troops, and you just saw them down there visiting, which again, why is visiting the troops so important? They hadn't even been down there a long time. I mean, no offense, but what does a visit from General Mattis and Secretary Nielsen do? Does the troop deployment need some kind of bolstering? Are they sad? Has there been something harsh going on down there? I mean, the weather is good. They're working in a non-combat arena. The troops are there in a support function. There's no reason for the troops their morale to be low or for them to require a visit of any kind. Again, photo ops. Hey, don't I look pretty? I'm at the border. I'm Secretary Nielsen. I'm down at the border and I'm kicking up my heels and looking cool in aviators. Check me out. Here's some B-roll on the website. I mean, this is just incompetence of the worst sort. And we shouldn't have to tolerate it. It is time for her to go. We need a real military-minded individual to take over that post. Now's as good a time as any. Bye-bye. No more Secretary Nielsen. No more support from over here. We'll be right back.
Are you still stuck on the healthcare roller coaster? Still paying those high premiums? And strapped into huge deductibles? Not knowing what's around the next turn? Well, then let me tell you about a sound, sensible healthcare choice that really is affordable. It's MediShare, the healthcare sharing solution people like you have been trusting in for more than 25 years. MediShare members report saving around $500 a month on their healthcare costs, and they never pay for things they don't believe in. Time to say goodbye to that healthcare roller coaster and say hello to MediShare.
Call *345 to find out how much you can save on your healthcare. MediShare. Call *345. Message and data rates may apply. That's *345.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Not so long ago, California was the golden state with a great future. Now, Thomas Del Beccario says that the state government has made the state unsustainable. He's the author of the book, The Divided Era, and has served as the chairman of the California Republican Party. Even if you don't live in California, you can learn from some of the reasons he believes the state is at risk. The first concern is California's infrastructure deficit. The State Water Project was designed decades ago for a population not greater than 25 million. Today, there are 40 million people within its borders, and the roads are considered some of the poorest in the nation. Government debt is a second concern. The published state and local government debt is $1.3 trillion, but many commentators believe the actual debt is closer to $2.3 trillion. Add to that an estimated $1 trillion more in pension liability, and you can see that the state of California has major debt liability problems. A third issue is California's taxes and regulations. It could easily be argued that the state is certainly the most regulated state in this country. It also has the highest income tax rates, along with one of the highest sales tax rates. This is one of the major reasons why so many people, as well as businesses, are leaving California. Residents fed up with high housing costs and taxes are fleeing the state. It has effectively hollowed out California's middle class. Finally, there is the issue of the California government itself. The state government spends more than $200 billion a year on a budget, and even more off budget in the form of programs paid with bonds. The long-term trend for California is higher income taxes, higher sales taxes, and more regulations. That's why California looks unsustainable. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And it's my pleasure to welcome frequent guest and friend of the show. We have Fred Jackson, who's the news director at American Family News and OneNewsNow.com, coming at us live from Studio H. Fred, thanks for joining in today.
Hi, Stacy. Yeah, coming at you live. I'm sitting in a studio in Mississippi with a jacket on. What's wrong with this picture?
It's the fall. You're supposed to be enjoying the beautiful changing of the leaves and maybe like 50 to 60 degree weather and a breeze. You're supposed to be breathing in the beautiful air. Oh, believe me, I've thought this through, Fred. I am a little chagrined. I asked a girlfriend yesterday at book club, I said, will you please reach out to whoever's in charge of this weather and tell them I want fall? And she said, I've been praying about it. I'm like, thank you. I need some help.
Our fall lasted a week.
I just can't believe it.
Yeah, no, we're right into it here. But hey, there's always somebody worse off.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No.
All your good friends and listeners up in Washington, D.C. are experiencing a snowstorm today.
Well, I've got one here, too. We had 5 inches. So, I mean, kids are home from school. They're so happy. They're just laid back. One of them's sick. She's been home all week. But our son, he slept in. He's gotten a chance to get a little bit of gaming in. And I know how it is when you're in high school, you've got so much work to do. So the snow day is always welcome. But for me, I'm just missing, you get to go outside and walk. You look at the leaves. You breathe in that air. It's like it gives you it's like a break. Because it's not super hot like the summer, and the cold is coming, but by the time it comes, you're ready for it. It's here months early. Like, this is way early for the snow.
Yeah, I got to do something about that global warming.
That's what I said. Where's the global warming I ordered? I'm an American. I'm a fossil fuel user. Where's my global warming?
Well, listen, I got a few stories, a few updates for you this afternoon.
Oh, excellent.
Down there in Florida, if you go to OneNewsNow.com, we have the story up there. Florida hits deadline for recount results. Florida counties have reached the deadline for submitting the results of their election recounts. And an Obama-appointed judge today, Stacy, rejected a request to give counties more time beyond the 3 o'clock deadline this afternoon, 2 o'clock Central Time. I was a little bit surprised by that. But now the election will be certified next Tuesday. So we'll see what's going to happen there. But, somebody was saying this morning, Stace, this is interesting. When Republicans lose an election, they for the most part accept the results.
Yeah.
When Democrats lose, it's time to go to court and try to get the results overturned. And that's what we're seeing in spades, both in Florida and also in Georgia. Even though the Secretary of State there in Georgia, Republican Brian Kemp, has got almost 55,000 votes over Stacey Abrams, she's still going to the courts, looking for legal challenges, all of that sort of thing. And but the state law sets the deadline of November 20 for the official certification of results there. But did you know what's happening in Georgia? Apparently now, Stacey Abrams, through a federal judge, has ruled that the Secretary of State must not certify results without confirming each county's tally, including absentee ballots previously rejected because of missing or incorrect dates of birth.
Those should not be counted. So you
No.
know, Fred, I'm one of those people who, so we all know that you tend to make stereotypes based on the behavior of some people, right? This is a human. It's a fallible thing that we do, but it's also it's rooted in the truth that some stereotypes have a kernel of truth that they kind of grow up around. And what I see happening here is, she looked ready to concede. She looked like, okay, I've lost. It was close, but I lost. And I've run for political office before and lost by a very thin margin. But I knew that people were watching my behavior, even in a tiny municipality for a school board race. People wanted to see how I would behave. And Fred, I tell you what, the cards that I received, that handwritten notes from people I'd never met before, who thanked me for being in the district and begged me not to go away or stop serving, and that the loss didn't mean that I wasn't good enough or that people didn't want me. It was just really strong candidates running, and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember reading them and crying over them. This is a little school board election. You know what I mean? So I'm telling you this because I can commiserate with the desire to win. And I see Stacey Abrams as someone who she's got horrible ideas. Her policies will not work. She will harm Georgians if she's in charge. She wants to confiscate guns. I can't find anything that I like about her policies, but I do know what it's like to be convinced that you can do a good job and want to be in a place to be elected to something. And so I'm saying all of that to kind of lead up to the fact that there are millions of Georgians who are watching her behavior, and she's setting a very, very poor example for them by refusing to accept the results of the election. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to say, oh, wow, we're within 1%, that triggers a recount, so let's do the recount. I'm not saying you don't have rights or you can't follow through on the rules, but Fred, this looks horrible. The idea that the reason she's losing is because she's black, that's been trumpeted everywhere. Lots of talking heads are saying that. And what they're doing is they're invalidating the valid and proper reasons why millions of people chose to either vote for her or against her by pointing to her ethnicity, and also her insistence that she's going to have votes counted that are clearly not to be counted because they don't meet the standard. So her integrity is the issue here. It appears that she doesn't have any. And the people of Georgia should be glad that she's not going to be their next governor, because her behavior here demonstrates why she should never hold that office.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the case. Like I said, right now, Brian Kemp, the Republican there, 55,000 votes. He's got 50.2% of the votes. So that's beyond the demanded recount.
Right.
But, I guess this is the modus operandi of the Democrats. They're going to fight. They've got their friends in the court system. And it is ridiculous to me when you have laws. And this is what some of the Democrat lawyers are going to court to say, we don't want the law applied here because it didn't work out for us. So overturn the law. That's chaos through the court system. But, I mean, that's the way the Democrats seem to operate.
It is. And so, in the end, I made the statement there, and I felt like, that's a true statement, about her integrity and all of that. But aren't we kind of watching the real degradation of people on the left as it pertains to operating with integrity and trying to put forward a face that, look, we don't just recount for nothing. We don't bring in ballots after the facts. We're having ballots coming in from Mars and getting delivered, by alien. We are not those people, but that's who they are. Like, we can't even say that anymore, Fred. We can't even say these our good friends, like Lindsey Graham used to say, my good friends across the aisle. We can't even say that anymore.
No, I know. Well, I tell you what, the Judge Kavanaugh fiasco and the way that the Democrats behaved in that, I really do believe it was an eye-opener, even for some who may be, center-left in their political spectrum. But to see the way those Democrat senators behaved, I mean, Cory Booker, others there on the Democrat side of the Judiciary Committee. I tell you what, it was an eye-opener even for a seasoned journalist like myself to see how bad things have become. When you're willing to destroy a good man like Kavanaugh, destroy his credibility in his community, destroy his credibility before those girls' sports teams that he has coached for years, you're willing to do that for your political ends. I mean, it ought to be frightening to Americans, whether they're on the left or the right of the political spectrum. This is not what America is all about. But those Democrats, a few of them on that Judiciary Committee who would like to be the next president of the United States, the way that they behaved, God forbid that they do become the next president of the United States.
My prayer is that the people who are in, the media types on the 501c3s or whoever it is, the messenger people, the ones who buy the airtime and they put together the cool ads that we like to share, that they've already got those prepped and ready of Kamala Harris interrogating, Judge Kavanaugh at the time, Judge Kavanaugh, the Cory Booker, the way he screamed at. I mean, it was so unsettling. And there's times where you're tempted. We're all tempted to say, well, I need this. And if I have to go here to get it, well, then I'm just going to go here to get it. That's a temptation we all face when you want something badly. But there is never a good end to that. And these people have unmasked themselves. And so I just encourage Christians. I know it is a very strong thing to go against your political ideology, in my opinion, especially for people who are, you may be saved, but you're not on the road to sanctification. You're at the very, very entrance point where you just made it in the door. You're not glorifying God by saying the ends justify the means. And when people show you that they don't have any integrity, after that, that's where you pull away and you say, I can't support that. And I know a lot of people criticize the president and say, well, look at the way he talks or look at his past. He's, been married a few times, et cetera, et cetera. But on both of these sides, it's a clear choice between right and wrong. So it's not really about Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. It's about right and wrong. Was it right for them to say that this one guy, just Kavanaugh, wasn't innocent until proven guilty? That in and of itself should have been the moment where all Americans said, okay, I'm pulling out. I may be a Democrat, I may be an independent, whatever I am, I can't support that, because that is one of the reasons why we have the country we have, is that we're innocent until proven guilty. We can't be drug off to a gulag on someone's word. It's what makes us America. And I just didn't see enough people pulling back from that, which to me was pretty sad. It was like a really sorrowful moment for us as a country.
Absolutely. Hey, speaking of the Kavanaugh hearings, have you heard the news about Michael Avenatti?
Yeah, he's got the Trump curse.
Well, here's the thing. He parades these women out making all these wild accusations against Judge Kavanaugh, and you got his friends in the Democratic Party saying the women must be believed. They must be believed. Well, Michael Avenatti out there in Los Angeles found himself in handcuffs last night because he was arrested, and now he's made bail after his arrest on domestic violence charges, and he's declaring out there. Now, he didn't put the words out there like this woman must not be believed, making the charges against me, but he says, I'll be fully exonerated. Here's the interesting thing. You remember during the Kavanaugh hearings, the mainstream media, every camera was in front of him. Hey, he even announced he's going to make a run for the presidency in 2020. But media research, they've looked into the coverage over the last 24 hours of this story. Barely a mention of Michael Avenatti. Barely a mention.
It's such a perfect turnabout. Isn't it, Fred? Isn't this the
absolutely.
perfect turnabout? Not even 90 days after he said this guy's guilty. Women must be believed. Now he's being accused of really it's the same kind of bad conduct in the same arena that he brought false charges against Kavanaugh. And he's been referred to the DOJ for investigation. So he's got problems all over the place. He owes $4.5 million to somebody. I mean, Avenatti is a train wreck from beginning to end. But this is the perfection of that, hold back your wrath. And I was even like at a point where I was so upset with what was happening with Judge Kavanaugh that when he came out that day and said, well, I this hasn't changed me. I still plan to adhere to the Constitution. I kind of thought to myself, how can you even say that? You have to be radicalized. You have to be over here on the right with me, with my gun and my Bible and my popcorn. Are you not over here? Like, how are you not here? And he said he wasn't. He said it didn't change him. He was still going to be the same jurist he would be before that. Isn't this just the comeuppance the Bible describes, where he says, vengeance is mine, I will repay? And we don't know if Avenatti is guilty, and I'll be the first one to say he's innocent until proven guilty. But boy, this looks horrible for him.
Oh, absolutely. And the cops in Los Angeles are saying, in this case, there is a person making the accusation, and apparently there are indications on her body that she has been assaulted. Oh. Now, again, like you say, innocent until proven guilty. However, this is a fresh case. We're not talking about something that allegedly happened months or years ago, right, like in the Kavanaugh case when he was a teenager. In this case, apparently the evidence is fairly fresh. We'll see where it goes.
Just stay tuned. That's all I say. When God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, he's not kidding. And this isn't really, I don't even know if this really fits the true definition of vengeance from the Lord, because this is based on behavior that Avenatti actually did himself. It's not retribution at all. If he did these things, then he should be prosecuted for them. But it's just funny that it's in the same arena that he accused Judge Kavanaugh falsely of the things, I mean, just horrible things. So my main thing is I just want people to accept the fact that Avenatti's not running for the presidency. And CNN should stop having Avenatti on their programming. Just stop trumpeting this man all over the country.
Wouldn't hold my breath on that one.
Well, I have to put it out there, Fred. I just want to put it out there in the ether. Maybe it'll eke on over to somebody at CNN, and they'll be like, you know what? We're not going to book Avenatti anymore. Do you notice how quickly other news organizations, if you have anything going on, they'll stop having you on? Like, I mean, they cut people off at the knees all the time. CNN just keeps the same old retreads. Maybe it's because they can't get good bookings. I know I no longer go on CNN. They're not on my yes list anymore. I don't go on.
The gym I go to talk about CNN, it's absolutely, I've never seen anything like that in the 40-plus years I've been in the journalism business. The gym I go to, they have, the whole bank of TVs up in front of you there. Mm-hmm. And so they have Fox, but CNN is on every time that I go there. And I'm not exaggerating. There is not a time, I'm at the gym for about a half hour at a time, when at least there's one story that is anti-Trump.
Well,
it's a constant draw. I have never seen a network that it is bent on doing anything the man says it's wrong. If he doesn't say something that's wrong, I mean,
but
they're all over the place.
did you see what they said? Zuckerberg said that if they stop covering Trump, their ratings go through the floor. Like the only thing they can do is talk about Donald Trump, because when they don't, people literally cut it off. Yeah. So they've got nothing.
Well, I think I don't always agree with the president, but I do agree with the president's assessment of CNN.
Oh, me too. I agree with him quite a bit. Not 100%, but a ton. Yeah. Fred, thank you so much for coming on today. I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great weekend.
Always fun. Take care.
Thanks. That was Fred Jackson, news director at American Family News. Be right back.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Think about the opportunities you have to encourage someone. When you notice that someone did a good job, do you just make a mental note of it, or do you actually tell them? When your spouse is going through a hard time, do you only get discouraged about how it affects you, or do you take the time to pour encouragement into them? We can choose to leave a trail of positive memories in the people around us if we look beyond ourselves and take advantage of the opportunities. We all need to hear positive words daily. Be intentional about encouraging others. It lifts others up, and it lifts you up too.
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
Hello, AFR listeners. My name is Yulia. I received an Operation Christmas Child shoebox gift while growing up in Central Asia. During this difficult time for my country, God used a shoebox gift to reveal himself to me. You can make a difference in the life of a child just like me by packing a shoebox of your own through Operation Christmas Child. To learn more, visit afr.net and click on the Operation Christmas Child banner today.
I tried to stay high every minute of every day. I came here to Teen Challenge because I knew this was a place that was going to change my life. It's changed who I am. I am not the woman that I came in the doors at all.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adult to Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Saving you money. I'm Linda Bell with the Fox Business Network. Do you plan to go shopping on Black Friday? Lynette Calfani-Cox of AskTheMoneyCoach.com says it might be best to stay at home instead. One reason is your finances.
The downside is that it's also a time at which millions of Americans really get themselves into debt, which is a huge financial pitfall.
While many stores offer discounts, she warns that you aren't always getting the best deals.
Recognize that some stores are going to mark up goods before they mark down the prices.
That's why she says it's important to comparison shop. But she says the biggest reason you might want to stay home is that with all the hoopla surrounding Black Friday, she believes we're straying away from the true meaning of Thanksgiving.
To me, that is not only excessive consumerism and faulty from a financial perspective, but then it's kind of sending our kids the wrong message and then from a value standpoint, taking us down the wrong path.
Saving you money. I'm Linda Bell, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey.
The DOD, the Department of Defense missions do not involve military personnel at this time directly participating in any law enforcement. Law enforcement is left in the hands of the Customs and Border Police, who have the statutory authority to carry that out. At the present, I do not anticipate military personnel coming into direct contact with migrants. I would just note my full confidence in General Shaughnessy and his NORTHCOM team. The troops who are deployed under Army North are very highly disciplined, and the only personnel there actually carrying weapons, since the engineers are engaged in putting in barriers, barbed wire, Jersey barriers that permit the Border Patrol to maintain control over the ports of entry and nearby. The troops doing that obviously are not armed. They don't need their weapons. The engineers to lay the barbed wire, the soldiers, Marines doing that are overwatched by MPs who are armed, and the normal force protection of wherever they go. The military maintains that stance. But the ones actually doing the missions there are not armed.
Now, remember, so that's General Mattis, and he was on one of the, they fly around on their private aircraft, and they speak to the media, and so that's what the background noise was that you heard. And he's talking about the role that the troops are serving down at the southern border, and it is a support function. So they have weapons down there with them that they can use, but they're basically installing barriers. And while they're doing that, they're being overwatched by military police. And military police are exactly what it sounds like. It's like your regular police force that you have in your city, town, municipality, whatever, your county, your police force there. They have a specific function, and that's keeping law and order and responding to calls. And that's what military police do. And in this instance, the overwatch that's being provided by military police just means that our troops are protected while they're executing their support functions, which is hardening the southern border. But I also just described to you how that's not happening the way it's supposed to. So also, we had a little bit of audio there from Fox News talking about the Black Friday phenomenon. And I want to point to, for those who are planning on going out on Thanksgiving Day and shopping, what retailers are doing is they're saying, well, some people don't have families, so we need to be open on Thanksgiving. And so they're telling their employees, well, we can't make you work, but if you do, you'll get time and a half plus $1. That's what they're offering at some of the retailers. And so people who would normally be at home because there's no choice because everything's closed are now making the decision to go out and work so they can make that extra money. And the stores are open, so people who would normally be at home are going out shopping. And so I am all about shopping. Y'all know I talk about the things I like to buy. If you've worked hard, you've paid your bills, you've tithed, you're in good financial order, you have some disposable income, you want to shop, there's nothing wrong with that. That's your decision. You're never going to hear me condemning that. But where are we going as a country where we can't have any days off? We can't have any days where the stores are closed, where if someone is going to make the unwise decision to spend their Thanksgiving holiday, the actual day, out shopping, that's not possible because everything's closed except Walgreens, and they're open because they got a pharmacy. I know there are 365-day-a-year stores, but do they all have to be 365-day-a-year stores? Like, I just can't understand why someone would say on Thanksgiving, and I know I'm a bit of a homebody too. It's like more than one person trapped in my body, where I love being at home. So as much as I like to go out and shop, and as much as I like to go out and spend time with friends and family, or go travel or go to the movies or what have you, I also really enjoy staying in the house and not going out. And Thanksgiving is one of those days where I've already started cooking the day before, just whatever needed to be done in advance. And then the actual Thanksgiving day, it's nothing but it's just cooking and sitting around and, cracking jokes and laughing and talking to people by phone and wishing them a happy Thanksgiving, and just, that's it. We're going to lose our opportunities to have that family time if we allow these retailers to control our behavior. It's as easy as saying, I don't shop on Thanksgiving. And if you're thinking, well, you're going to miss all these deals, you just heard them describe how there are no deals for you to really miss, because retailers are smart enough to know how to mark stuff down, but how to have the pricing so that once they've marked it down, they're still going to make a profit. And I have no problem with them making a profit. I'm not against retailers staying in business. But how much more time do we need to spend shopping? And so, full disclosure, I'm not a huge Black Friday shopper. I've been a few times, but for the most part, I try to avoid it, mainly because the people who are out shopping on Black Friday, some of them, they give everybody else a bad name. They're pushy, they're rude, they're mean, and their avarice and greed for getting the DVD player or whatever it is. I just look around, I'm like, well, we don't need a DVD player. We don't need another television. So, the biggest deals are usually on electronics. On the home decor items, the best time to buy those is actually after Christmas. So unless there's something you want to buy for a family member or friend that you're buying a gift for, that you just absolutely, the only way you're going to get a good deal on it is on Black Friday, I just don't go. And I know there are people who enjoy it. They go out, get some girlfriends together and go do it. And I'm not condemning that. But for me, it's just not that much fun to be out with the crowds and standing in line they never have enough people working. It's just a mess. I encourage you to think about what you'd rather be doing on Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday. And if you'd rather be home getting your Christmas tree up, or maybe you're the kind of person you already have your Christmas tree up because you do it so that you have it up at Thanksgiving. Maybe there's something that you want to do at home, like put your feet up on the couch and grab a cup of hot tea or, your favorite soda, and just watch some TV and just sit with family, sit in front of the fireplace and listen to some music, whatever. There's so much more for us to do than to shop. And I know some people really enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with it, but just think it through. What is the best use of your time? And it's a personal decision for all of us. We just have to make our own choice. But I'm just not going to be out there fighting crowds on Thanksgiving. I'm just not going to do it. There's no way I'm going shopping on Thanksgiving. And the day after Thanksgiving, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be out there either. Now, if you catch me out there and I have on my little headband, that means something happened. Something major happened that I had to go out, and I'm just going to be so shamed because I've said now on the radio that I'm not going out, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going out. Like I'm 100% sure I'm not going. There's just nothing they have to sell that I'm going to need. And we actually just had, so our microwave is doing weird things when we turn it on, and it's not new. I got nobody to blame. It's an older microwave, and I have just been holding on to it because I don't want to spend the money to buy a new one, and now I'm going to have to. And this is right before I have to do all my cooking, and I usually don't microwave a lot of stuff for Thanksgiving, and that's fine. But now the control panel on our convection oven is not working, and so now I've got that going on. So it's pandemonium over here, you guys. I am literally looking around like, what am I going to do? So I have to figure this out before Thanksgiving Day. This is all happening now. So, yeah. I mean, seriously, if anybody should be talking about going out and trying to get a Black Friday deal on a double oven, it's me. But I probably won't. I'm going to take care of it before then so I don't have to be out, because I do not want to be out there. And just in case you're wondering, the status of most Americans, even with this booming economy, all of the jobs, et cetera, the U.S. dollar reaching a 16-month high. Consumer sentiment is a 98.4 as of November 2018. It's stronger than any other year prior to the year 2000. But the problem that Americans are experiencing is they're borrowing money to make this fun happen. Americans are borrowing the money. National debt soared to $21.73 trillion. U.S. Treasury Department figures show that the U.S. government deficit and the difference between spending and income rose to $779 billion in 2018. That's a 17% increase from the previous year's figure. The estimate for next year's federal budget deficit is currently projected to be $1.35 trillion. That means that Congress must borrow $1 trillion to fund government activities, plus borrow $350 billion more to pay the interest on the accumulated debt total. I mean, if you let that sink into you, that is pretty frightening. Now, total household debt has risen for the 16th straight quarter to $13.29 trillion. Mortgage balances rose by $308 billion to $9 trillion. Auto loan balances increased $9 billion to reach $1.24 trillion. Student loan debt increased by $61 billion to $1.41 trillion. Credit card debt increased from $45 billion to $829 billion. These numbers in and of themselves are good enough reason to stay home on Black Friday, because the temptation to overexpend is just so high, because they have the signs up to tell you that what you're looking at is the deal of the century, when in reality, it may be a good deal, but it's not the deal of the century. It's never the deal of the century. Otherwise, how could they make any money? So we know that's not true. So I am not against spending money, borrowing money, doing whatever you need to do, but we've got to be wise and we've got to be prudent. So I also want to talk about this poll that's fresh out. Voters 5-1 see anti-Trump media bias as unfair and disrespectful. Now, this to me is some of the most interesting poll information. They call it a forceful plurality of voters believing that the media is unfair, biased, and disrespectful to President Trump. And wide support in this poll for the White House's suspension of CNN reporter Jim Acosta. Now, I want to make this point to you. If you're talking to friends, coworkers around the water cooler, maybe some mom when you're picking up the kids or what have you says, Jim Acosta has a right to a pass. They violated his constitutional rights. This isn't about the Constitution with Jim Acosta's press pass, because CNN is an organization and they are the people who have employed Jim Acosta, and they hold 50 hard passes. In addition to that, CNN can request a day pass for any reporter that they would like to come in to be at the press briefing on any individual day. They're so embedded in the process, and that's such a tight relationship with the White House press corps. There is no access that they currently do not have, except for Jim Acosta, whose press pass has been suspended, not revoked. And it should have been suspended many, many, many moons ago. But of course, he's just been getting away with murder. So this is basically them telling us things that are meant to rile up our emotions in favor of Jim Acosta. But I think most Americans find him to be absolutely repugnant. His behavior is horrifying, and he actually makes other reporters who are just there to do a job look bad. The recent post-election poll by John McLaughlin shows that among all voters, the plurality of 48% thought the media was unfair and biased against President Trump. The number of them who feel that the media was fair and not biased was 34%. So the people who don't know whether the media is unfair or biased at all was at 9%. 9% of people were like, I don't know. Those are people who got caught during dinner and they're like, I'm not participating. I'm just going to give you anything. I'm just going to say any old thing. Earlier this year, the McLaughlin Group found that 77% can't believe everything in the media. Only 14% that they believe everything that they see. And the media's credibility has been greatly harmed by this. He also added that the average American is much smarter than the media elites. By a 5-to-1 margin, all voters, as well as independents, say the media are unfair and biased against Trump. The American people have figured out all too often what is supposed to be news is just simply liberal opinion masquerading as so-called journalism. And McLaughlin also polled voters on the media's criticism of Trump's visit to the synagogue in Pittsburgh. 62% said the trip was appropriate. 44% said the media's criticism was disrespectful. And 30% said it was respectful. And that's your hardcore activist base right there, that 30%. So clearly what we're seeing is Americans kind of, you get to a place where you've heard enough and you know what you're hearing is garbage. And they're now starting to, to me, it's becoming internalized where the profession of journalism is losing respect. And we need journalists. We need intrepid reporters and people asking hard questions. We need people to write those op-eds and those pieces where they expound upon these stories and help us think about things in a different way, turning things over in a different light, writing books and deep dive research on subject matter. Journalism is an important profession that we need in this country. It's a part of how we maintain our representative republic. And I just wish that the other poll that was just out this week showing 14-1, 14 liberals for every one conservative in newsrooms. I wish that number wasn't so lopsided because we don't think about things differently. We don't consider that we could be wrong when we're in an echo chamber that only has people like ourselves in it. And you might say, well, Stacey, you're in an echo chamber. No, I'm not. I have plenty of pushback, plenty of people writing me 8-paragraph missives about everything wrong I say on the show in their opinion. And I read those and I do the research. I look up what they're talking about to make sure that I've gotten it right. Not to mention the check from the Holy Spirit where if I'm in the wrong, I'm definitely aware. So God bless you. Citizens, enjoy your evening from the Heartland. Back with you tomorrow.